Female villains, lesbian vampires, the nature of hunger and immortality. All this and more in VE Schwab's Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. So I just finished reading VE Schwab's book, Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. It takes a long time to get to the vampires, and so in that way, it is sort of literary in its approach. My favorite thing by far was the female villains. I think you just don't typically see a well-written, complex female villain that often. And in this book, we have not one, but two, Sabine and Lottie, I would say. Both pretty interesting, and I enjoyed their sections the most. So this is the kind of book that kind of takes a while to really figure out what it is doing and what sort of the main storyline even is. We follow Alice in 2019, who is going to college in Boston, and then we also follow Maria, who is living in the 1500s. And so, like, very slowly do we learn more about these characters, and, like, the idea of vampires is introduced and all of that stuff. I do think the pacing got pretty slow around halfway through. I think some stuff should have or could have been streamlined. I feel like I saw in the back of the book that it's sort of marketed as a love story, and I don't really think that's accurate. Like, is there love in the book? Yes. But there's also toxic relationships, and it talks a lot about what it's like to be a woman in society, particularly, in the 1500s, the 1800s, and how there are not any options other than to get married off to some random man. So you have that sort of like the societal pressure on women contrasted with the so-called freedom of being a vampire. Nobody can touch you. You can live as many lives as you want, but it comes at great cost. And I think the way that vampires are represented in this book is really quite fascinating. Hunger is like a bottomless pit, can never be satisfied. It also talks a lot about how immortality isn't really a thing, in that, like, even if they're vampires, they may live forever, but they lose the parts of them that make them human. Like I said, I wasn't really sure where this book was going until I was probably like 70% in, and then I was like, okay, these pieces are starting to fit together. I'm starting to understand sort of like the main trajectory of the book. I still just didn't really understand why Lottie couldn't get somebody else to kill Sabine. One thing that the book does a lot of, because like I said, it's sometimes the pacing becomes really slow, and there's a lot of sort of time jumps, jumping 50 decades kind of thing in people's lives, which I understand, but sometimes I felt that certain parts of the book we should have lingered there for longer to really get and build up the emotional resonance. Particularly, I'm thinking of Sabine and Lottie's relationship. Like, when they first meet, I really enjoyed reading those pages. I enjoyed like seeing that relationship develop, and I wanted more from that. And I felt like in general the book would have been stronger if I felt like I had more time to really get them. One other thing that I really liked and appreciated about this book is just that all the characters that matter were all women, which is rare just in general that you read a book where the entire cast of characters, or at the very least, all the characters that are most important, are all women. Definitely need more books like that.